Hi everyone, it's me, Sandy Cruz of Sandy K Nutrition, Health and Lifestyle Queen. For years now, I've been bringing to you conversations about wellness from incredible guests from all over the world. Discover a fresh take on healthy living for midlife and beyond, one that embraces balance and reason without letting only science dictate every aspect of our wellness. Join me and my guests as we explore ways that we can age gracefully with in-depth conversations about the thyroid, about hormones, and other alternative wellness options for you and your family. True wellness nurtures a healthy body, mind, spirit, and soul. And we cover all of these essential aspects to help you live a balanced, joyful life. Be sure to follow my show, rate it, review it, and share it. Always remember, my friends, balanced living works. Hi everyone, welcome to Sandy K Nutrition, Health and Lifestyle Queen. Today I have a return guest. Her name is Kristine Carlson, and she's a New York Times bestselling author. She's best known for her work with her late husband, Dr. Richard Carlson, in the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff series. And she was on my podcast last year where we discussed how to transform tragedy into purpose. And this time we are going to be talking about how to be happy in our ever-changing world. And, I think this is a really good topic because the last two episodes I've had have been very, very science-y. Most of you who follow me and have been following me for over 5 years now know that I do not believe that science can completely dictate our wellness, because our wellness embodies a lot more than just what is explainable by science. We have to consider the health of our body, our mind, our spirit, and our soul. And that's why this discussion is just so wonderful, because happiness, is this a goal that we can all achieve? Can we all achieve happiness all the time? Please do me a favor. Listen to this entire podcast. Follow me on all of my socials, Sandy K Nutrition, Health and Lifestyle Queen, or just Sandy K Nutrition. Anywhere and everywhere. I'm active on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Rumble, Threads, all of the above. And I'm also a writer, just like Kristine. Follow me on Substack. Most of the stuff that I put out there is for free. There is a paid option as well. It's just Sandy Cruz, SandyKruse.substack.com. The link will be there. And the reason I started the Substack, it's not even a year, and I think I've got about 350 subscribers now. It's because I write short, explorative essays to really help you think about your wellness as it pertains to you. I don't dictate, you must intermittent fast, or nobody should be eating kale because kale can kill you. I've become a little bit of I don't know. I feel like this world of wellness has gotten to be too much of a dictatorship, in that I'm right, you're wrong, the science says this, so you have to do this. And I don't believe this. I believe that we are so bio-individual, and nobody can tell us exactly what's going to help us heal our body or our mind or help with our spirit. So that's why I started my Substack. So go find me there. Go find me on my socials. And if you can do one thing for me here after you listen to this, two things. One is share this podcast episode, whether it's sharing it through a text with your friend or share it on your own social media and tag me. I'm just anywhere. If it's on Instagram, it's just at Sandy K Nutrition. This helps me to keep having these amazing conversations and great guests each and every week. Also, if you're listening on Spotify or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, there is a way that you can add a few kind words to your reviews, provide me with a 5-star rating, and how this podcast helps you live a healthier and happier life. Thank you so much. And with that, let's cut on through to this amazing interview with my friend, Kristine Carlson. Be sure to follow her as well. And all the links are in the show notes. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sandy K Nutrition, Health and Lifestyle Queen. Today with me, I have a return guest. I have the lovely Kristine Carlson back. And Kristine is a New York Times best-selling author, best known for her work with her late husband, Dr. Richard Carlson, in the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff series, with over 25 million books sold worldwide. She's also a renowned speaker, inspiring podcast host, retreat leader, and blogger. And her mission is to help women transform from heartbreak and loss to live their best lives with joy, gratitude, renewed passion, and purpose. With her resilient spirit, powerful presence, and heart-centered teaching, she guides women through the challenges and transitions of middle life and awakens them to their truth and the expression of their highest selves. And the first we talked about tragedy, turning tragedy into purpose in our last recording. That was episode 248. And now we're going to talk about how to be happy in our changing world because, you know, Kristine and I think we're pretty aligned in a lot of ways. We try and stay out of really kind of heated discussions and politics. And, you know, I know for me personally, I just have to do what makes me happy and healthy. And that's kind of where it's at. And that's for me and my family. So I think this is an important discussion. And I just want to welcome you back again, Kristine. I know you and I just really align and we sync. So I'm happy to have you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sandy, for having me back. Our last discussion was so deep and so wonderful. And I also love your energy and feel very aligned with you. So thank you.
I think it's important for anybody who maybe didn't hear our first conversation just to give us a backstory because everybody I know has heard of Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, but I think I'm going to call it's a hero's journey. What led you to do what you do now?
Yeah, that is true. So you probably well, I'll just go back to the beginning. Richard and I met in college, and we immediately fell in love. It was a very fairy tale-ish story of romance. I felt like I'd always known him, and we dated many years before we got married out of college, and we had two daughters. And Richard embarked on his journey as an author after becoming a certified rolfer, a bodywork therapist, and got his master's and PhD in psychology during that time, and then really wanted to write. He'd been working with people. This is all prior to positive psychology, prior to life coaching, even the field of coaching, but he had developed something called happiness training because he didn't really believe that long-term traditional therapy helped all people. He did think that their traditional therapy helped some people, but he felt like the people that he knew that he was supposed to speak to would do better with what he called happiness training. And that was really teaching 5 principles of happiness. So he went and he did that for many years and started writing his books. And on the 10th book, he'd written many books on happiness, but on the 10th book, he wrote Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. And that book completely took off for a couple of reasons. We felt that it was the timing of that book. It was 1997 when that book came out. And that was right on the cusp of the exploding technology, computer technology, the dot-com era. It was like where email started really happening. It was really an overwhelming time for people, and that we think that's why Don't Sweat the Small Stuff became so popular so fast, because where technology was meant to, we thought, give us more time, it actually ended up taking more time because it tied us to technology 100% of our time versus having those spacious time periods where were away from our technology, where we were away from the phone. Like when you couldn't take your, phone, because we didn't have cell phones in the car with you. So you had that time alone and you had that time away. You would sit at your desk and talk with people on the phone and perhaps work on a document, but you weren't being emailed constantly. So there's this way in which people became very overwhelmed, and in that overwhelm, their anxiety grew. And I think that the generation of people that really resonated were the 35, to 55-year-olds, where they started to realize, wow, our lives are, we're not as happy as we really want to be. What's going on? Why? How can we change this? And it was a really good era also for self-help. People were into self-help. They wanted to learn more. They were into personal development and growth. So that book really took off. And it was then upon the 10th anniversary of Don't Sweat the Small Stuff that Richard got on a plane, and he was promoting a different book, and he was going to New York to do publicity. And on the descent of that flight at 45 years old, he died very suddenly from a pulmonary embolism. And it literally just was so really truly unexpected that it completely rocked our world. My daughters, mine, his parents, my parents, all of the friends and family that loved us, his fans all around the world. I mean, it really, really was just a wow, really, how did this happen moment. And for me, it really did, as you say, it really did start my hero's journey. I mean, it shattered my life and my perfect life the way I knew it. Of course, there's no perfect life, but you have this idea of what you're trying to attain, and it shattered that and set me on a whole new trajectory of healing. Healing through loss, healing through grief, seeing my girls through grief. And then in that, it was amazing because it also opened up a whole new body of work for me. I realized that part of my healing was journaling. And so I healed through writing. And as I was writing this journal, I started to become so aware that I was actually sharing a template for grief. And then a couple of years later, wrote the book Heartbroken Open, a memoir through loss to self-discovery, because I also realized that the journey of grief led me back to myself in such a profound way. And I also, I hadn't returned to full joy, but I was definitely having a very alive experience of life. Like I was knowing that grief wasn't all sadness, that it was intermixed with joy and all sorts of, different emotions. But I started to realize, well, this is really what being alive is. This is really being alive, because you feel everything. You feel every breeze of wind on your face. You look up and you see the beauty of the sky. Light is really light and explosive, and because you're awakened. And I started to really draw these conclusions about going through this heartbroken open experience, and that it really had awakened me into a higher level of consciousness, into a higher level of compassion and understanding. And then, of course, I hoped and deeply hoped that I would return to my happy self and a life full of joy. And I did return to that life. But I returned a different woman. And I think that's what happens to all of us when we go through any big change, what you've been through with your health, anything that we have to go through that is, deep and healing also brings us into a new place in ourselves. And, I think that was the most beautiful part of the journey, was to realize that the growth that happened was so huge for my soul and for my expression in this lifetime that I couldn't, in a way, I would, as much as I would love to have Richard here with me, it was as if our soul contract had given me this incredible gift. And it was the gift of really knowing that I was going to make the most of this life that I was living. And certainly the work that I've done over the past almost 20 years now has profoundly impacted many people, and many people through my own books and through my retreats and through my speaking. So it's been just a wild ride. And that brings us, to today. And so that's kind of, in a nutshell, that's the history of my story. And what brings me to the work that I do is a deep passion to help other women, especially, overcome these very big life transitions and come to a place where they step into their lives. They give themselves permission to step into their lives with the fullness of expression, the fullness of what they have to experience while here for the rest of their journey on earth.
Yeah, you have a very powerful story where you turn something that was a real tragedy into somehow finding your way to your gifts. And it's certainly not a good way to experience it, but often that's what happens to us. And that whole word happy, you know, I heard this and I found this really interesting. We're going to get deeper into this. I stopped saying to my kids, I just want you to be happy and healthy. And the reason I stopped that, Kristine, is because I was like, okay, the word happy has a definition that doesn't necessarily align with what life is going to offer you all the time. So it's almost like I'm giving them false hope to be searching for constant happiness. And so many years ago, I started writing them letters. So, like on Valentine's Day, on their birthdays, I don't buy cards, I write them a letter. And usually that letter is talking about their gifts and talking about just life. And so I think defining what is an enriched life, you know, does that mean it's happy? Like, I don't know if you get where I'm coming from, but
I do. I do. Yeah,
okay,
I
I would
do.
love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, well, I think what you're speaking to is really profound. We can choose words, and words have different connotations and meanings. But really, what is it the meaning? What is the meaning that you give the word? And what happiness is for one person may be something totally different than what happiness is to another person. For example, I think of happiness as being this kind of continual feeling of contentment.
Mm.
Versus some people might think of happy as being elated in the moments of happiness, that I call joy, like, so joy to me and happiness are something slightly different. Joy happens in a moment, and happiness just kind of feels like an overall contentment with your life. It doesn't mean that you're happy every single moment of every single day. It just means that you know how to get back to that place of contentment with your life, and being grateful quicker, because it's the overall, how like there's this 80-20 rule or something, where overall you know how to keep life in perspective, and you know how to kind of go with the ebbs and flows of things that make you unhappy. And every day there's something that happens that I might wrinkle my nose at, or say, oh, wow, that's not so great. Or, oh, that makes me mad today, or that makes me mad in this moment. But the difference between people who have tools in their toolkit, or who have really discovered this deep level contentment and peace inside, is not that those things don't happen. They happen to everyone every day. It's how you get back to that feeling inside. And to me, peace and happiness are very similar, and that might be something different for somebody else. You have to be able to define what that state means for you. And then you don't have to make happiness your goal either. It can be something else, whatever word resonates with you about the state of mind that you want to be in. I think the word happy is just, it means that, it means that you feel this sense of elation, or this sense of gratitude that brings a smile to your face, but you can define it any way you want to. And maybe that's the first place where people need to start, is really, what is the state of mind they really want to be in? And what does happy mean to them? What does that mean? To like a third world country, happy might mean something totally different than to Americans. So is it a material question on some level? Maybe, because happy, how can you be happy when you're starving? But there are people in the world, and you will find this, that there are people in the world, all over the world, with different circumstances, that would define themselves as happy people, or other people might define them as happy people. So it isn't really your circumstances. It's who you have developed into from the inside out. And how you have done that can be a lot of different ways. It can come from life, it can come from choices, and it can come from, mostly, and I would say 90%, is, how do you view life, and how do you keep your life, how do you keep the traumas, the problems, the different things that happen in perspective, and how do you build the resilience necessary to go through difficult times, and then return to a place where you can say, yeah, I feel happy. Just yesterday, I was just out walking my dog, and he was running up a grassy hill, and I was just like feeling this bounce in my step, and I was like, the sun was shining, and I'm like, I feel so happy, and it's like this feeling of, I'm so glad I'm here. I'm so glad I'm alive. I'm so glad I get to take this moment in, and it feels so good, and that's kind of, I think, how I define happy. And sure, you're right about your kids. You're setting your kids up for a bad situation if you say you only want them to be happy, because that isn't life. Even the happiest people in life have tremendous moments of grief and sadness. And life is about having all of the experience too. But I don't think that happiness is so far off base that we can't attain some every day, or that we can't attain a high level of contentment in our lives that feels very stable, that feels very good for the most part, with the natural vacillations that happen every moment, with disappointments that happen, with things that people say to you that might anger you, all of that is just normal. It happens to everyone every single day.
Yeah. I did this I did this podcast with oh God, what's his name? Hale Dwarfskin. Dwarskin? Dwarfskin. wrote The Sedona Method. Have you read that book?
I haven't.
So he was actually part of, gosh, Rhonda. I can't remember the name. The Secret. Remember The Secret?
Rhonda Hall?
Rhonda, was it Patrick?
Oh, I don't know.
She
Yeah.
wrote The Secret.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And so he was actually working with her, and I think he was in the movie The Secret. And I recorded with him, and we talked about how to become imperturbable. And it was a really neat discussion. And of course, it involves all kinds of things like things that trigger you. And, basically the whole point is when we're constantly triggered, we are far from imperturbable, right? We want to be in that place where, sure, that's not saying you should, put up with abuse or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is in this world, we kind of have a lot of these triggers, and we live in a electronics world where we have social media trolls, and we have like it's a lot. And Hale talked about being imperturbable, so it's kind of like what you're saying. You go for a walk with your dog and you're just like, wow, like life is good. And that kind of stuff just it rolls off my back because it just doesn't matter. And
Well, and I think it's about kind of also when I think of imperturbable, I think about being less reactive and more responsive to life, which is
yes,
really about not sweating the small stuff. I mean,
yes.
so like you defining what small stuff is, small stuff isn't when your husband dies or when you get the news of cancer. That's big stuff. And, and yet small stuff is really what bothers most people the most. A lot of people do really much better than we would think in the big stuff. And the small stuff is what nags and takes away and steals joy every single day. And when you are super reactive to life, then you are easily triggered. It's like you're a pincushion ready to get pinned versus, versus like a rock where water is falling over you.
Yeah.
It's like you want to become that rock that just allows water to fall over you versus being the pincushion that is being pricked all day long. And I think that's where when people start to realize that in order to do that, in order to practice that way of life, you have to be able to be mindful and pause. You have to be able to, I call it stop, drop, and notice, like sort of like what you do in a fire. You stop, drop, and roll. I call it stop, drop, and notice, like stop, drop down into yourself, into your heart, and notice how you're feeling. And when you notice how you're feeling, you can notice if you're feeling agitated or not. And then you can pause and reflect on what it is that's agitating you. Or maybe your body isn't feeling good. Sometimes we're just in a reactive state because we didn't sleep well the night before, or we're coming down with something, or we're PMSing if you're a woman, or you're stressed out about something. And I think when you can stop and pause and become more mindful about what it is you're feeling, then you can become curious and question, what is the nature of your thinking? How are you thinking and what are you thinking about today? I think it's very simple that everything goes back to our thoughts and our thoughts about life and the lens from which we're viewing life. And the more we can track our own thinking about things, the more we can interrupt those thought patterns. One of the beautiful things about neuroscience today is it shows us that plasticity means that you can rewire your brain in a positive way. Like you can change your thought patterns and rewire your brain. And what's in it for you to do that is that if we were able to track our thinking, all of us, we would be able to see these different thought patterns that bring us to different places within ourselves. And they're very ingrained in us. Like we all have these tape recorded things that we say to ourselves all day long and in a loop. But the more that you can interrupt that loop, the better you're going to feel And the more you'll vacillate towards something more positive because you're consciously trying, you're consciously deciding and choosing to do that. And this is where true consciousness comes in, is when you get to choose. So when you get to see yourself and become the witness of your thinking. And I love like Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now and A New Earth, because he talks a lot about this, where you can witness your thinking. And once you can sit back and witness your own thoughts and realize, wow, I now know why I'm feeling so bad. I now know why I'm so reactive. But so now I just have to catch myself. I have to catch myself in the act. And then I have to stop, drop in, and notice, like before I react. And when we start to do this, life starts to really magically change and we change. And I think with that, Sandy, comes a much higher level of compassion that has the opportunity to grow. What I have found over my lifetime is the people who have the least level of compassion for others actually have the least level of compassion for themselves. When you're super hard on yourself, you tend to be hard on others. And when you're super hard on yourself, you tend to be more reactive. So if you can soften and be more gentle and more kind and compassionate with yourself in the way you talk to yourself, and the kinds of thoughts that you're thinking about yourself and about your life, then you'll start to see that you'll start to replace those thoughts with more positive ones. It's just the natural evolution of what we do as humans. So, yeah, so I know that kind of went on a tangent, but I really feel like so much of that is at the nature of what keeps us back and holds us back from choosing to be happier people, from choosing to be more content, from becoming, less reactive and more responsive to life. And certainly, like our books in the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff series, they point to all these principles really beautifully. That's why people have loved them over the years, is that it really teaches you how to do this, like very practical things that people don't even know they're rewiring their brain, but they are. We know that now.
Yeah, I think, there's different personality types, and you mentioned people who are harder on themselves tend to be harder on others. So I am 100% fully admitting that I am very hard on myself, and I tend to be hard on people around me. And it all really stems from these expectations, right?
Mm.
I expect that it should go this way because this is what I would do in this situation. And so it's almost like I set myself up for failure all the time, Kristine, all the time. And I do this because it's kind of in my nature, because I expect that I would act in this way. So why wouldn't they? And I know it's wrong. And I sometimes have a hard time snapping myself out of it. So you'll probably love this, but you know what I've found as a tactic to snap me out of that and to get me out of that whole expectation loop, which disappoints me and then makes me unhappy, is I started doing this whole Ho'oponopono
Oh, I
regularly.
love that. I love that. I was just doing that this morning.
Oh, were you? Okay.
Yeah.
So you know what I did? Okay, you're going to laugh at this one.
Why don't you describe that for everyone so they know
Sure.
what it is? Yeah.
Sure. Um, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. No, wait. Oh, see, now I don't have it written. Please forgive me. No, my God, Kristine. See,
Wait, I'll look it up. But
yeah,
it doesn't really matter. That's what I heard is
yes,
it's like you can kind of just say it different every time as long as you get the four things. I'm sorry, please forgive me. Thank you. I
I
love
love
you.
you.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. That's it. So I actually, on a post-it note, wrote this on my mirror in my bathroom, and I wrote it on my husband's. Because both of us tend to almost ruminate on things that maybe can't change right now. And it's not to do, it's just in life. And it could disappoint us and make us unhappy. And then you get in that loop. And I've started doing this regularly. So it's the first thing I see in the mirror. So I usually say it a few times while I'm in the shower. I go on what I like to call ho'oponopono walks, where I never have headphones on when I walk in nature. And I say it and I notice the things around me. And I notice I've actually done that, where I've had conversations with my daughter, and, they say you can send Ho'oponopono to someone else when you think of them. I've read a few books on this. I have found it kind of changed my life for the better. And I know it sounds so simple, but I think everybody has a different tactic or whatever that they'll resonate with. This really resonated with me, as simple as it is.
Yeah, I think it's really powerful to have tools like that in your back pocket and things that you go to. I went to that this morning because I had let's say it's a conflict. It was more like we just weren't on the same page. Like we weren't understand. I mean, I understood, but I think I was placing my values on somebody else, and kind of in mad that she wasn't doing what I wanted her to do. And it had to do with a dear friend of mine who's just lost her husband and her daughter. And I just thought, well, you need to go out there and be with your mom. You got to go out there and be with your mom, and she needs you now. But there was this dysfunctional stuff going on between them, where the mother is still taking care of the daughter. She doesn't live close. All this stuff, just a situation. And I just remember like a feeling like, well, sometimes, you just love us fierce. And sometimes you just have to say, I'm coming out, because I don't believe that you can make the decision you need to make for yourself right now. You just lost your husband last week. And so I was really impressing that on this person. And I really offended her and deeply offended her. And I could tell. And she was very I understood. I mean, she could tell I was thinking of her a certain way, which may or may not be true at all about her. And I started to become aware of that this morning. So I did the Ho'oponopono exercise, and then I texted her and I told her, I said, I just really hope you have a wonderful day, and I want you to know that that I what did I say? I can even read it to you from my own phone. I said, good morning. I hope your day is full of joy. I do trust your instincts where your mom is concerned and know you will support her in many ways. Lots of love. And then she just said, she wrote me back, good morning. I will always appreciate your love and concern. You're the best. So it healed something that I was mad about, that I know she was probably very upset by. And it was just a 4-line note saying, I trust you. And that came through that exercise. And then so now we can both go about our business, and I can support her mom the way I feel like she needs it. She can support her mom the way she is going to do with her mom. And it's all fine, but I had overreacted and gotten all caught up in my own ideas and my own expectations, just like you said you did. And sometimes we do have really strong feelings about things, but I think behind all of it, we have to give other people the grace also of knowing that just because we think something's true doesn't mean it's always true. And so when I get caught up in a situation like that, I quickly come back to that idea that just because I think it's this way doesn't mean it actually is. It's just what I'm thinking. And I'm like, I don't like to be, I don't like having energy sucks, like where I'm allowing some situation to suck my joy out of me, to suck my energy out. I have way too much that I want to accomplish and contribute to others and to serve. And I definitely want to serve from love. And so when I'm off base, like I might have been off base yesterday, I quickly come back to this idea, like, what's the most important thing here? The most important thing is that we find this mutual love that we have for this woman who's going through loss, and that we become her team. And we can't become a team if we're separating because we think other people should be doing things the way we want them to. People have to do what they're going to do, based on what they can do and what they is in their heart to do. And then you have to be grateful for what they do and then do your part the way you need to do it. So, yeah. So I don't know. That was kind of interesting how that all came around in this conversation. But I hope that other people listening find that helpful.
I do think that if you look at, well, I guess there's a couple of different points there. If you look at the root of a lot of unhappiness, can be expectations of people who you expect to act a certain way around you and they don't. And then another root of unhappiness could be if you allow all these external voices come into your head and then they can start to affect your happiness. I mean, we see that happening in the world right now, right?
Yeah, you mean external like input from like social media and from all the different news
Yes.
channels and
Yes. And
yeah.
it gets you so fired up. And,
Yeah, as soon as I feel fired up, I turn off the news.
yeah, me
I'm like,
too,
okay, I've had
Kristine.
enough.
Me too. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like, for me, there are certain things that can affect me in such a way that it will upset me. And I feel like, the more empathic you are, the more certain things will affect you. Like I
Yeah, it's
can't
true.
watch certain things at night because, there was a time I remember back, oh gosh, I used to be massively into Grey's Anatomy. I used to love it. And then there was one season, and it happened to be around the same time that my daughter was sick. And it was all these sick kids. Like the storyline, and I'm like, I'm done. I turned it off and I never watched it again because it was affecting my brain, my happiness. It was putting all sorts of things in my head that really didn't need to be there. So I think having these kinds of boundaries around what's coming at us is really important.
Yeah, I think you have to ask yourself what is really feeding your anxiety and what's helping you cope. And certainly if something's feeding your angst, you don't want to keep feeding your angst. You want to get yourself away from the things that are feeding your angst and return to what nurtures, a calm, more peaceful um, feeling inside. And again, like I think all of these things are things that you have to cultivate. It doesn't happen like right all at once generally. It's like peace is something that you need to cultivate. And what I always say to people is just from the moment you start your day, even if you look at how you start your day, how you start your day is really how you live your day. So when you get out of bed, what is the first thing besides peeing that we all do?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or a cup of
you know?
coffee. Hey.
Yeah, yeah. So coffee, and then what? Like I always say to people, like I literally sit in silence for about 5 minutes before I get up. Then I get up and then I go and I drink a big glass of water and then I make my coffee and then I sit and it's silent. I mean, I feed my dog because he's going to be looking at me and bothering me if I don't. So I feed my dog, but then I sit in silence and I'm usually turn on my fireplace if it's the winter, or I'll sit outside and watch the sunrise if it's nice outside. And I literally don't go to my phone for like a half an hour. I don't look at my computer or go to my phone for half an hour because I just want to be in that space of quiet and peace and solitude and just allow myself to just kind of like bathe in it before I start my day. And then I start my day and I live from that place of peace. Often I'll close my eyes in meditation. Sometimes I won't. It just depends on what I'm feeling. Sometimes I find an open-eyed meditation with the fire better, and but I think the more you start your day off the way you want to live it, the 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 more chance you have of maintaining that sense of happiness or peace or composure or contentment throughout your day. And it's like a touchstone, really. I mean, if you can find it within yourself and cultivate it, and you know what it feels like, you can return to that, throughout your day. And by just simply closing your eyes and, remembering or placing your hand on your heart and tuning into your heart or asking yourself a question, how are you feeling? Just these simple kinds of things are what return us to a state of mind that, again, I'll go back to what we said earlier, that we can become more responsive to life versus reactive. And responsive, again, is to be able to pause before you respond. And it could be a moment of pause. It doesn't mean like you're going to pause for 10 minutes before you answer somebody's question. It just means a moment that you're going to take a deep breath and you're going to notice, how are you feeling before you react? Reaction is knee jerk.
Yeah.
Response takes a moment of checking in. And that's perfectly okay. I mean, you'll find people really love that when you just take a moment and you pause in contemplation. Sometimes one of my best lines when somebody says something that upsets me is, wow, I really need to think about that. I really need to think about what you're saying. And it's like, because then I know I'm not reacting, but I'm going to think about it. I'm
Yeah.
going to contemplate it. I really need to think about that. That makes me really curious. I don't know the answer to that right now.
I like that. And then so the one thing I think that also can contribute to, and I'm going to switch this to peace because I think we kind of agree that peace just, it's more aligned to what we're talking about.
It is.
And here's a good example. I hear a lot of the times, oh, I can't do that. I have to get up. I have to go to work. I have this kind of a job. I have this. And I'm like, okay, so let me think about this. Good example. I'm traveling. I have to get up super early in the morning. And you know how morning flights, it's like stressful and you got to get to the airport and there's traffic. So what I do is I make sure I get up a half hour earlier than I actually need to for that piece.
I do too.
Just to set I'll do everything. I'll move it and I'll shift it just so I can have that little bit of peace. And usually, how I start my day, I think you're going to like this one, Kristine, because I started this actually, it's over a month that I've been doing this now. There were some stuff that was going on just before Christmas and stuff that I had no control over. So instead of writing in my journal, which I normally do, I fast forwarded to 1 year. So let's say if it was December 15th, I forwarded it. Maybe you've heard this. I saw this from somebody and I'm like, oh God, I love this. So instead of writing December 15th, 2024, I wrote December 15th, 2025. And every single day, it's now over a month, I'm journaling as though it's 1 year later. So I heard this or I read this from somebody that it actually can help shift your own energy and your own mindset and your own vibration so that you're more aligned and attuned to, what you really want out of life. So I have two journals. Like I have one where it's, you know, it's it's kind of a crapshoot journal where I'm just going to write whatever I need to get off my chest or anything. And then I have this journal where it's more of, yeah, I'm aligned to that. So,
That's cool.
I'm kind of a weirdo. I like to do different methods to support my peace.
Well, there's a chapter in Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, and it says, ask yourself the question, will this matter a year from now? And so it's like, if you can if you can ask yourself that question and you're dealing with something that is, a real problem, well, that real problem will matter a year from now. But if it's not a real problem and it's just something you're sweating that you can let go of today, it won't matter a year from now. And you'll find that it works really well to gain perspective. So in a way, I think when you forward to a year from now, that's pretty cool. Like you're kind of acknowledging what is that year from now look like.
Yeah, I think we have to figure out. I mean, some people might go, okay, that's weird. I wouldn't do that. And that's okay. But for me, I find it really helps me because it helps me to really align with, like you said, what matters.
Yeah,
These are the
what
things
matters
that
most.
matter. And whatever's going on now that I can't change right now, I'm going to maybe put it in my, let off some steam crap journal that I've got. Because I also
Yeah, and
believe,
you don't sweat the small stuff journal.
sometimes we have to unload.
You do. Yeah, you have to let it go. And whatever it takes for you to let things go that don't matter, it just opens up space for you to live into what really matters to you. And I think even just taking time to answer those questions, at different stages of your life, because what matters to us in our 30s and 40s doesn't matter so much in our 50s and 60s. You'll see a lot of young people buying new furniture, building their lives, getting their homes in order. And you'll see a lot of people my age selling their homes, getting rid of their stuff, and so I think it's really helpful over time to understand that we change with our lives and that's perfectly okay and good. And in fact, healthy to change and to allow yourself the gift of change. And yeah, what a great conversation we've had today, Sandy. We've gone all over the map.
I know we have. I have to talk because before Christine and I recorded, I sent her this research and I thought it was super interesting. So I am going to link this in the show notes. And basically, it answers the question, do you think the world is happier now than before? And some of the research, so the research comes from integrated values surveys by Our World in Data. I will cite it properly in my show notes. So in Canada, in general, in 1984, this is self-reported, 95.8% of people self-reported that they are happy. In 2022, that percentage dropped significantly to 84.9% happy. In the United States, 1984, 90%, 90.3% happy. 2022, 88.2% happy. So, what I will put in the show notes is the link to this research. They're coming out with the newest poll in February. And of course, it's very subjective. It's kind of like what we talked about. It's self-reported, but I mean, I've seen research where they say that people who don't have children are happier. So it's very subjective. Like I can't imagine my life without my children. I
Well, it
can't.
might be less, there might be less stress for them.
Maybe it's based on stress. A lot
It
of
could be.
this.
There's a lot of stress in parenting for sure. I mean, especially today and with all the things you have to be worried about and concerned about and the social media and all that stuff. There's a lot of stress in parenting. So maybe people equate their stress level with happiness, I would imagine.
I think so. And I know that there was one graph there that even talked about economic stress and financial stress as it
Of
related
course.
to happiness. And, you know, s- I'm going to put this link because, and I think maybe we'll end with I'm going to ask you the question. Do you think the world is happier now than, let's say, 1984 or not as happy? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, absolutely. I don't think people are happier today. I think that we're living in a world that is promoting, many people are divided and and they're not finding the common ground, the ways that we're more alike than different. They're valuing things that destroy their relationships versus build relationship. Um, and yet, yeah, I don't think the world is a happier place today. There's a lot of, there's just a lot of discord going on, but that doesn't mean that you can't be working on your own happiness quotient. It doesn't mean that you can't practice a life in a certain way that brings you, deeper engagement, that brings you into a place where you feel more content. And, that's why I did come on today too, again, was we have a new book out, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff Every Day. And it's a thought by thought book where it's one page a day that gives you a life practice, that gives you perspective, that gives you something to think about that will help your relationships with your family, your coworkers, your kids, or it gives you something to think about and how to take care of yourself in a way that promotes peace, that promotes gratitude. And these are kinds of the kinds of things that as a world we're maybe not focused on, but as an individual you can focus on them. And each individual and the level that they're able to create of their own contentment and happiness in their own lives impacts the world greatly.
Yes.
Because it impacts your family, it impacts your friends, it impacts the circle, the community that you live in. And you can see that in the grocery store, somebody who walks in with a smile on their face that connects to other people versus somebody who's grumpy and doesn't connect with other people and is just grumpy, and it's like you can see. And I do think that post-COVID has had a lot to do with why people are still reeling from the trauma of that experience. It's many people didn't do very well with their mental wellness during that time and are still healing from that, so, and we don't really talk about that because it's like anything, we're just supposed to get over things so quickly, but really we're only talking about 3 or 4 years
Yeah.
since we were in COVID. And that's just, that's not really a lot of time for people who are deeply wounded by that time. So that said, these kinds of conversations, I hope have inspired your listeners today. I know I feel inspired just by being in your presence, Sandy. And so thank you. Thank you for opening the door to this conversation. It's been really powerful and wonderful. And I hope your listeners feel so too.
I feel exactly the same as you, Kristine. We somehow have that. And it's that energy of the collective, right? It's like what
Yeah.
you're saying. Like my husband, he can come home, Kristine, and look at my face and then immediately feel like, oh, she's had a bad day. It's rare because that's not usually how he comes home to me, but he can feel it when it's
Yeah.
that. So if I think we provided the listeners a few different tools and a conversation that would maybe help to enlighten and inspire others that, whatever you're putting out there, you're getting back, you're actually contributing to a collective of higher vibrational beings on this planet. It helps with our world, it helps with our happiness overall. So I know you're doing so many great things and you do all kinds of retreats and speaking events. And I just think you're pretty cool, Kristine. Someday we'll meet in person.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you. Thank you so much, Sandy.
thank you, Kristine, for your time. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to share it with someone you know might benefit. And always remember, when you rate, review, subscribe, you help to support my content and help me to keep going and bringing these conversations to you each and every week. Join me next week for a new topic, new guest, new exciting conversations to help you live your best life.